Hello there, I'm Matthew Asbell, and welcome to Intangify, where we discuss the intangible aspects of business. I'm an intellectual property attorney by trade, and largely that's about intangibles, but we recognize that intangibles go well beyond the things that people create and what they own. And there's all sorts of aspects that businesses need to survive and thrive in today's world, in today's economy. My guest today is Camila Kaul. Camila owns her own business called Just a Squiggle. And as we'll learn, she is a consultant who helps businesses with creativity, something that we really all could use and need to use. And we're gonna look into that today with a demonstration, in effect. So it may be very helpful for you. I know in just a few minutes of talking to her, I already learned some things, and I'm really excited to have her as my guest today. Before we jump in, I did want to say that, today is Cinco de Mayo. So felicidades to our Mexican friends who are listening to us today. And I can tie that in. Really, it doesn't work for Camila, although she's a Latinx leader. She's not a Mexican. She's actually originally from Colombia, but she lived in Mexico, so that I can tie that in. But with that said, I'd love to introduce you to Camila and have her tell you a little bit about Just a Squiggle. Camila, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, how are you, Matthew? Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here in Intangify. And yes, I would love to share a little bit more about what we do in Just a Squiggle and how important it is. In a nutshell, Just a Squiggle is business creativity coaching. I specialize in helping entrepreneurs and helping teams at large corporations to come up with fresh ideas, think about problems in a different way, and make better decisions. All of that through the power of creativity. How do we apply business creativity to impact your bottom line, to make sure that you're having a competitive advantage and that you are activated that superpower that we all have, but we can just forgot to how to use it on demand.
That's perfect. I love to believe that I'm creative. You call it a superpower. I feel like I'm a superhero, but I think that's going to be tested a little bit today. So
yeah.
We're going to see. But I happen to know a bunch of people who don't think of themselves as creative, and I wouldn't want them to turn off the podcast at this point, going, well, yeah, I'm going to unleash my creativity. I already know I'm not creative, so I shouldn't bother. What's the message for those people?
Great point, Matthew. You're absolutely right. Sometimes we think it's like, oh, I'm a right brain type of person, or I'm a left type brain person. I am not creative. And we always associate creativity to arts and music and things like that. Well, I'm here to tell you that is absolutely false. We are all creative by nature. Humans are creative beings. We just forgot that we actually have that power. Remember when you were a kid and you had endless possibilities with your imagination. You were able to convert an empty box into an airplane, into a building, into a cave. You were able to activate that in your brain, and possibilities were absolutely endless. So imagine the power of having that back into your life, but now applying that endless possibilities to your business. It's exactly what we're doing here. It's figuring out how do you activate that power that you have. You just forgot it. And the reason we forgot it is because of experience. As we go through life, we start getting a lot of experience, a lot of things that we know how to do, and that keeps us safe, which is great. That's how we learn, and that's how we evolve, and that's how we maintain our status in the world. And that's great because, for example, you don't have to learn how to use a knife and a fork every time you eat. But it's really bad when we have to come up with new ideas because we always go to our vault of experiences. Our brains always go into shortcuts mode, and they always try to get us to things known, things that we've done in the past. But the problem is that when we're faced with challenge or an opportunity to create something, we just don't know how to do this. And that is the creative part that I am here to help with. Is it's absolutely at your disposal. You can be creative, more creative on demand, and it only takes certain triggers or provocations, I call them, to get your brain thinking differently. So first of all, I want to demystify that you are, or you're born or not creative. We are all creative in nature. And two, there's no such thing as right brain, left brain. It's just one thing. It's just one brain, and it's all interconnected. So you have the ability to turn those powers on demand based on your needs and what you have in front of you.
So if I'm a listener today, or someone watching this podcast, and I'm a particularly cautious person or doubtful person, I'm not sure what the right word is. The thing I would be wondering is, well, why is there a person that is a consultant that does that, and what makes you qualified to tell people how to be creative? So where does your expertise come from?
Yeah, it's a really good point. Well, I've spent the last 12 years of my career working at Google, one of the most creative and innovative companies in the world, doing exactly this, innovating, helping teams innovate their processes, their marketing campaigns, their sales strategies, their products. And I have done this for hundreds of clients all around the world, different countries, different languages, different challenges. And I've always seen the potential and the magic that comes when you allow yourself and your teams to think differently, to think thoughts they've never thought before. At Google, we specialize at actually having a lot of techniques and methods to innovate. We are one of the most innovative companies in the history. And that comes not only because we have great products, but also because we have great people, great teams that are actually pushing themselves to think 10x, to put themselves in the spot to be creative. So my expertise comes with figuring out how to do that for clients internally and externally out of Google, with challenges that are big or small, with companies that are one person or 10,000 people. And I'm here to tell you that it works for every single one of them, because those challenges are applicable to everyone. You have to solve a challenge. You have to think differently about an opportunity that you have in front of you, and you have to make better decisions based on the information that you have. All of those things are things that creative thinking help you with: problem solving, better decision making, and absolutely empathy. So all of those things will help you and your teams get better. My expertise goes exactly there. And I would say, for everyone that's a little bit skeptical, there is a method behind this. There is a science behind this. Creativity is not just let me paint something nice or let me be an artistic part of me. It's not only that. That's one outlet of creativity. But another type of outlet of the creativity is how to use problem solve better. How do you empathize better? How do you come up with fresh ideas on demand? And for all of that, there's methods, tips, hacks, everything that you can think of that you can activate, learn, and become a master at.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I don't know if it was intentional or not, but the trademark attorney in me is all of a sudden noticing as you're speaking that Squiggle kind of looks and sounds like Google. Not that anybody would be confused, but I'm like, oh, you sort of maybe like hint at your Google background in your name. Don't know if it's intentional. Don't have to say anything here. But
I didn't realize that until right now.
You've been saying Iggle words and Oogle words for so long. It's just everything's got to be Oogled.
It just comes naturally. That's true.
But like it really strikes a chord with me because my practice is largely about creativity in different contexts. I deal with scientists who are trying to find creative solutions to medical problems and business problems. I deal with artists who are creatively producing expressive works, music they write, or books or things of that nature. And I deal with businesses that brand and are trying to protect themselves and innovate in that context. And so hearing that there is a person that can help people with creativity is sort of like it just aligns so well with kind of why I do what I do. But I guess I want to understand from you, in the few minutes we have before a break, why you do what you do and how you got into it.
Oh, that's a great question. I love that question. I did it for two different reasons. One is I am passionate about the subject, and I quickly became a master of it within Google. I saw the potential, and I saw how easy it was to do it and how amazing results you can get. And the thing that I thought is, I want more people to know about this. I want to be able to democratize the access to this information, because it is so powerful that everyone that is currently trying to tackle a challenge can have access to it and think about it differently and come up with very better and good ideas. But more than that, the reason behind it is like, imagine the potential of having this in front of people that are solving the biggest problems in the world. How can we change the way that we do that if we have the right tools to be creative, to innovate in the way that we think? So I want to leave a better world for my kids, and I want to make sure that whatever we're creating, whatever we're building, either products, services, solutions for the biggest problems on earth, we're doing it from a perspective of innovating, from a perspective of different thinking, and not just going back to what we've always done that has proven useful, but it's not going to get us anywhere else. So that's the reason why I did what I do. And that's what motivates me every morning, is being able to share this with more people and helping them in their endeavor to change the world.
Thanks so much, Camila. So we're going to go to a break, but before we do, I wanted to say, news flash, we don't expect in this podcast to solve the political, environmental, religious crises that are going on in the world today. Just in the short time that we have together, we'll tackle some things maybe a little bit closer to home, a little bit smaller, just by example. But we hope that the people out there who are listening, are going to apply it to some of those things, so our kids can grow up in a better world. With
Absolutely.
that, I will say we're going to go to a break. You've been listening to Intangify on talkradio.nyc, and we'll be right back.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargeman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Welcome back to Intangify. I'm your host, Matthew Asbell. My guest today is Camila Kaul from Just Scribble, and we're talking about business creativity. Before the break, Camila, we were talking a little bit about your life prior to Just Scribble in Google, the other Iggle. I have to imagine that there was a Camila before Google. So I wanted to ask, what you were doing before you got into the world of Google and creative thinking.
Yeah, well, that's kind of one of those results of my creative thinking. I ended up in Google. But yes, before that, I was in the finance world. I was a sales trader, actually, like trading stocks and bonds and things like that. Had absolutely nothing to do with this. It's a very creative endeavor in another way, and consulting clients on financial decisions, which it was great at that time. It was not my outlet. It was not the way that I think I was going to change the world. So very happy that I ended up switching my career and going more into marketing and technology with Google. And it's been a fantastic experience. And with that, when I decided to go to work at Google, and I decided to pursue things like innovation, creativity, I was very aware that I needed to get more experience in terms of not only real experience with clients, but also knowledge. And I became an expert in innovation, and I did a lot of executive education on neuroscience on Wharton. I did courses in Kellogg. I also am accredited from Harvard Business School as well. So all of those experiences and bolt of knowledge started putting it all together for me, and it culminated just in a way of helping clients and helping people just get to better solutions through the power that we all have, that innate power that we all have.
So you were studying Wharton, Harvard, Kellogg. You were studying while you were at Google?
Yes.
Wow. And you were a mom?
And I am a mom of 3.
All right. Well, that's impressive.
Thank you.
So I think now, we should transition a little bit and actually demonstrate a little bit about what it is you do. And I shared with you this example. I decided to do something very close to home and very easy, which is this podcast. Why not? You're on the podcast. Let's talk about the podcast.
Let's do it.
So, I guess I'll pose the problem and then you can tell me what to do from there.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, great. So, this podcast is relatively new. We started back in March, in the beginning of March. And my goals in doing this podcast were in part to reach entrepreneurs and startups, particularly, in this part of the United States where I'm based, but really anywhere in the country or even the world. But I had a secondary goal, which is to reach and interest attorneys that work within larger companies. I have several of those that are clients of mine, and I have great relationships with, and and that's an area that that I also want to develop in terms of my practice. So I want to connect with in-house attorneys, whether they be guests on this podcast or whether they just take interest in what we talk about and who we have on the podcast. So I don't think I'm reaching them, and I don't know how to reach them, and that's sort of what I think is my problem.
I love it. It's a great example of a great problem, and everything in creative thinking starts with a well-defined challenge, and that's key component. It's the first component of everything that we're going to do, is having a very clear goal to solve for. So in this case, your problem, how to get more of those in-house attorneys to listen to the podcast. So what we're going to do is one of my favorite exercises, that it's called the revolution technique. Is one of those exercises that has been around forever. We actually don't know that some of the geniuses in this world, like Leonardo da Vinci, used this type of techniques, and it's all about revolutionizing your way of thinking. So what we're going to do is give your brain a little bit of a provocation and ask it to think thoughts it generally doesn't think of. So in this case, the revolution technique talks about how do we break rules and assumptions that we have around our own problems. So in this case, Matthew, I'm going to ask you, for example, what are some rules and assumptions that you have about how do you bring attorneys or people to listen to this podcast or participate in the podcast? Can you give me a couple of them? What are some rules and assumptions that you have to do to get these people in?
Yeah, but maybe before I do, maybe you could sort of tell me what you mean by rules and assumptions, because that's kind of confusing to me.
No worries, that's fair enough. Rules and assumptions is, for example, every time that you bring a customer, do you want to bring someone to your podcast, you send a LinkedIn invitation. That could be a rules and assumptions. Or another rule could be, I always invite them through word of mouth. Someone introduced me to them. Those are kind of rules and assumptions. And what we want to do here is to actually break those rules and assumptions. I'll give you an example with a client of mine in New York City, actually. We were talking about how do we revolutionize and create a very different type of bar experience in New York City. We all know that all the bars have been invented in New York City. There are so many, and it's very hard to think of a new type of concept for a bar in New York City. So we started there and said, okay, what are the rules and assumptions for bars? Okay, they open at night, they have a bouncer at the door, they are loud, they serve alcohol. Great, those are rules and assumptions of our problem. Now, I want you to break those rules and assumptions, and we're going to use provocative questions. We're going to challenge the rules and assumptions with 3 questions. What if we do something weird? What if we exaggerate the rule? And what if we do the opposite of the rule? By doing this, we're asking your brain to think thoughts it has never thought about. Generally, you're not thinking about how to break a rule or how do we exaggerate a rule. That's something that your brain doesn't consciously do. So that's how you start activating and provoking your brain to think differently. You give it a provocation. Provocations is anything that takes you out of your normal way of thinking. It's brain food, pretty much. You're feeding your brain with something powerful. So in this case, when I was talking to my client, I mentioned this and it's like, okay, great. What do we do something weird? Okay, let's say something weird. What if we don't open, what if we do it in a public library? That was the first thing. It's like, okay, let's do it in a public library, in a place that you generally don't have a bar. Okay, what if we exaggerate the rule? Instead of being open only at nights, we're going to be open 24/7. And then what happens if we do the opposite of the rule? Well, instead of having a bouncer at the door, we're going to have a librarian at the door. And the only way to get into the bar is if you quote a book at the entrance. So by doing all of this, we started creating this concept. It wasn't the final idea, but we started creating the concept of, okay, the next concept bar in New York City is going to be in a public library, open 24/7, only if you can quote a book at the entrance. And that on its own started a revolution of ideas for this person that ended up putting a super cool bar that it is around books. So my point of it is we have to provoke your brain to think differently. So we're going to do that with you. We are going to have to think about what are those rules and assumptions about how do you invite guests to your podcast? And then we're going to break those rules with this provocative question. How do you feel about that?
I feel great about it, but before I even try though, I definitely want to say, you have to tell us where's this bar. I mean, a lot of us are in New York City. I mean, I got to go find this library bar.
Absolutely. Sip and read and sip, I think is the name of the bar. Read and sip.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, she get her a little promo or him a little promo while
yeah. I will have to text him. It's like, hey, you were in this talk radio in New York City. You're gonna get some customers going into read and sip.
I should have negotiated some sort of discount if they mentioned Intangify, but oh well.
All friends of mine will have a discount at read and sip.
Okay, so mention Camila's name.
Yeah.
So
okay.
So furthermore, before we jump in, I guess I had sort of 2 other comments I wanted to make. Well, one is I don't know if it's intentional or you use it, but it sort of occurred to me that if we're going to focus on rules, assumptions, and provocation, we're going to RAP. R-A-P.
Oh my God, you just blew up my mind. I am still in that with pride. Thank you so much. And I'm saying that to
an IP attorney. I haven't filed the trademark, so you're safe.
Thank you. I love that. Let's do that. Let's wrap.
Let's wrap. So before we wrap, I asked you the question before as to, well, what do you mean by rules and assumptions? And the answer you gave me was, I think, very clear. The thing that the way I interpreted, I sort of thought about it in like the way computers work, computer model, in the sense of it's like an if-then statement. I believe that if I do X, then I will get the result I'm trying to achieve.
Correct.
So in trying to solve this problem of how we get in-house attorneys to listen to and participate in this podcast, the thoughts I would have are, well, I mean, I posted on LinkedIn, and there are in-house attorneys that I'm connected with on LinkedIn. Don't know if they're here, but sure, that's one. I don't do this, but I have direct relationships with many of them, and could specifically send them an email or a message through LinkedIn or elsewhere. And maybe a third one is I think of maybe a particular industry or company that I'm interested in knowing more about, and I reach out to try to get them as a guest. And they may listen to the program in the course of doing that. I have actually had at least one or two in-house people on this program before, not with sort of that intention, but really as information sources. But I wonder about, hey, will that get more in-house attorneys to pay attention to my podcast?
There we go. Okay, I love those 3 rules and assumptions that you already identified. So email, the LinkedIn posted, or industry outreach. Let's call it cold calling for that. Okay, love it. So you have your rules and assumptions. So I'm gonna help you trigger your brain by provoking it with some provocative questions. So
careful, you never know what's going to come out when you trigger my brain.
You never know, and let it be. This is not the end result. This is not going to be the end solution. We're just triggering your brain to think differently. That's it. We're just giving it food. It's just a snack. It's just the introduction. Okay. So I want you to take that rule and assumption, any of those, and I want you to do something weird with it. What if you do something weird? What if we exaggerate the rule? And what if we do the opposite of the rule? Okay, so make weird, one of those rules, make it weird, one of those rules exaggerated, and one of those rules just do the opposite. Okay.
Very good. So because I'm very, very nervous that I'm not going to be able to come up with anything on the fly, and we're right at the right time, we're going to go to a break, and I'm going to think during that break. So
love it.
Listening to Intangify on talkradio.nyc, and when we come back, we will look at the weird version, the exaggerated version, and the opposite version. But we're going to go to a break right now. We'll be back shortly.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back to Intangify on talkradio.nyc. I'm your host, Matthew Asbell. My guest is Camila Kaul from Just a Squiggle, and we're talking about business creativity. We're in the process of going through this hack called Revolution, where I posed a problem regarding my podcast. I would like to get more in-house attorneys to pay attention and listen to my podcast with regularity and to participate as guests, etc. And Camila is challenging me and the assumptions and rules, the rules and assumptions that I make in relation to that, and we're in the process of trying to figure out how I can flex my brain to be a little bit more creative. So you told me before the break, Camila, I need to challenge with 3 questions. So you want to just recite those back for us again? You have them on the screen. But...
Absolutely. So the provocation would be, what if we do something weird? What if we exaggerate the rules? And what if we do the opposite of the rule?
Do I do those in order, or does it matter?
Doesn't even matter. Whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever came out, you can do 3 of them, 2 of one, doesn't matter. Well, the point is we want to make sure that we're thinking differently from what we usually do. We usually invite guests through a LinkedIn post or through outreach or through an email. But what if, and that's the important thing, what if we dare to do something different? Let's think about that. Something weird, something exaggerated, something opposite, because your brain is not wired to think this way. Your brain is wired to go to the vault of experiences, taking that shortcut and say, oh, I've done it in the past. It works. Let's just, if it's not broken, let's not fix that. So in this case, we're purposely trying to make it think differently.
Okay. So, I'm going to first evaluate the questions that you're asking me to answer. Because I just want to get my thought process out there. I love it. Let's do it. And so my first thought process was, okay, do something weird. Oh, what can I do that's weird? I don't feel comfortable. If I do something weird, people are going to think I'm crazy. People are gonna, they're not going to be interested in this. And even I don't even know what direction to go in. So I kind of struggled with that one. I said, well, what about the other ones here? And I went to, what I kind of answered for weird ended up being more like the opposite. So, so I did come up with a couple things, but I don't know if they're anything worth talking about, but we'll find out.
Awesome. At this point, we're being expansive. It doesn't matter. It all goes.
Okay. So, the first thought I really had is, I'm using LinkedIn and I'm telling people about the podcast, but I mean, I haven't really specifically called out who I'm talking to here. And if I wanted to do something, and I think that's still part of a rule and assumption if I did that. If I wanted to do something weird or kind of the opposite, I could actually call them out and tell them not to come.
Yep, that's the opposite of it. Good, I like that. An anti-campaign. Do not come to my podcast. You are not welcome here.
We're not talking about anything interesting that you're gonna have any interest in. But that was the initial thought. Don't come. This is not going to be valuable to you. The exaggeration part, where I came up with was, oh well, I could post kind of targeted ads.
Okay.
I could put out a survey and ask specifically if you are an attorney operating, working inside of a company, what would you want to hear about on a podcast about intangible aspects of business?
Love it.
Okay.
Love it.
And my last one was the bribe. I could offer them something valuable.
Nice.
I can buy them a drink, get them lunch, give them free legal advice, anything of that nature.
There's nothing like a good bribe to get people in. Coming from an attorney. I love your thread of thought, and that's some of those things are very natural. I don't want to do something weird. Weird sounds weird. I don't know if I am comfortable with that. That's totally fine, because your brain, again, is super wired to, you know what? I don't like weird. I like what I know. It's okay. Let me just get back to just LinkedIn outreach. It's fine. As I was hearing you, I started thinking of my own ideas. It's oh my God, what happens if he, instead of sending an email, he would send personalized handwritten cards to a bunch of people? And that's the opposite of the email. Let's go back to old style, and let's do a campaign old style. What about when I was thinking weird, it's like, okay, weird, what could be weird? Okay, what if you use content creators in LinkedIn or social media to help, like, to make a campaign around content creation about how do you use law? How do you, some examples of how they've been sued in the past? I don't know, things like that, but using content creators to get more people in. That's weird. That's not something that you typically see of an influencer talking about law. So all of this is with the intention of, there is possibilities, there is options. We just need to be brave enough to embrace them. And this is the power that when we're actually doing it in teams. When you do it on your own, it's awesome. You know how to activate it for yourself. But now think about the possibilities when you have a room of people doing this at the same time. It's exponential. The ideas go wild. And at this moment in time that we're just provoking your brain, we just want to be expansive. We want quantity, not quality. We'll take care of quality later on. We'll take care of distilling the best ideas later. But for now, I just want to make sure that we think about all the possible angles that we can go this way. So I think you did a really good job. How do you feel with this?
I feel okay. I feel like I could have done better. Your answers were probably better than mine, but I guess that's not the point, right? To your point, when you're brainstorming and you're in brainstorming mode, there are no negative answers. There should be no criticism. It should be a safe space. And
not at all.
And sometimes that needs to be noted for people. I would think in a team environment, before you start with this, you need to be like, look, this is a safe space. Say something stupid. It's fine.
That's totally. Yes, and you bring a really good point there, especially when in a team dynamic. I call them my B agreements. Here are the agreements that we're going to have right now to make this a safe space. One, we're in a greenhousing mode, means everything goes. Let's nurture those ideas. Let's take the word no and but out of the vocabulary. It's all yes and, because we want to be expansive in nature. We want to make sure that we are bringing ideas along and we're giving them enough love and nurture them and see where they go. We don't have to have the perfect answer right now. We're not looking for the perfect answer right now. We just want to get your brain to think differently and just provoke it. It's just like, imagine that you're having a snack. That's exactly what we're doing right now.
So there's some interesting associations I'm making with some of the things you're saying that I think are worth pointing out. One is in the context of improvisation and comedy. That concept of what you said, which is you cannot say no or but, you must always say yes and, is a concept of comedy improvisation, which people do. That's how they do that, and they're funny on the fly. They always accept the premise that's presented to them. So I thought that was interesting. And the other thing that I know from personal experience as a musician, which is when you go into a recording studio and you try to record music in the a melody on a particular instrument or something, a little part you're going to play in that instrument, you have to take that same mentality, and the more you talk to, let's say, your studio musician and critique the what they're doing and direct it, the less likely you are to get something beautiful or innovative. So you have to restrain yourself and be positive and just let it come out. Let it flow.
Let it flow. You bring such a good point, and it's such a good reminder for everyone listening. Constraints breeds creativity. Sometimes we just need a constraint to help our brain think expansively. So, for example, a constraint could be time. A constraint could be a question. And when you have those type of constraints, your brain starts working harder to find a good answer. And if you add on top of that the right provocations, then your brain just goes into explosion mode. It's like, okay, I have two things to think about it, and I'm just going to get more synapses and connecting the dots. So it's exactly right. It's figuring out what's the right provocation, what's the right constraints to give it, and of course, letting it flow. To your point, as a musician, that's a great example. You just have to let it flow. Don't try to judge your ideas, or if the music was right or the sound was okay. it will eventually come together. At this point, we're just being expansive.
Yeah, and even the best songs that I've ever written in my history as a songwriter, well before I was ever a lawyer, were the ones that were just sort of came out and inspired, rather than the ones that were sort of formulaic and, okay, well, if I do it this way, I'm gonna orchestrate the whole thing and set it up this way and follow this kind of formula in order to, with the words or with the music, that like the way it would come up. So where do we go from here? You've provoked my brain.
Yes, that's a great point. So the second stage of this is, okay, we have enough ideas. Let's say we ended up with combinedly 10 ideas. Let's say that's the case. Great. Now the next question is, what do I do with 10 ideas? Great to have ideas. But here's the thing. Creativity is all about value creation. It's about doing something with it. Otherwise, you're just being imaginative. And being imaginative is great, but that's not going to change anything. So you have to generate value. And to do that, you have to start thinking about distilling the right ideas. So how do you start thinking about what are some elements that can help you identify which ideas make more sense to you? Which ideas are the best ideas to pursue? There's many methods to do that, but a simple one should be, for example, just creating some criteria that you organize your ideas based on. Okay, for this to work, it has to be broad, it has to be New York City, it has to be, you get a set of criteria that require this to make it to the real world. And then you start thinking about if your ideas hit those criteria. So that's an example of how do we make a lot of ideas, distill it into 2 or 3, and then we start thinking about a plan of action.
So do I need to do that now, or are we going somewhere else with this?
We'll definitely do another session to figure out what is the best idea for you. I'll get you another exercise next time that you invite me to the podcast. How does that sound?
Great. Well, we're gonna go to break, and we'll be back shortly. You've been listening to Intangify on talkradio.nyc.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Sorry, I couldn't get to that mute button quickly enough. I was too busy typing. So, welcome back to Intangify on talkradio.nyc. I'm your host, Matthew Asbell. My guest is Camila Kaul from Just Scribble, and she is a business creativity consultant. We were doing an exercise before the break where she challenged me to think creatively in relation to this podcast. We sort of adopted this sort of acronym called RAP, where we were going to look at the rules of assumptions, and then we were going to provoke the brain to think of something weird, to think of something the opposite, to think of something exaggerated as a way to come up with creativity. It was a lot of fun. I thought we came up with some great ideas. But I guess I have to ask, is that all there is to business creativity? Because then I don't need to hire just a squig.
Oh my God, no, there's a universe of things that you can do. This is just a little taste. This is a chocolate that I'm leaving on top of a pillow. There's so much more things to do here. Once you have a set of ideas for you, or you're doing it with a team, then you're going to, let's distill them. Let's figure out what those ideas look like. Then we kind of like massage them and think about which ones become a real plan of action. And then we put a plan of action in place that it's creative enough that it's going to move you towards innovating. So all of those things happen through different type of exercises, techniques that I will help you, coach you, and take you through journey through it. But what I would say is the best part of all of this, and I think it's the coolest part of all this, is actually triggering your brain to think differently. So I would invite you to actually do another exercise with me. What do you think?
Sure.
It's another creative thinking hack. It's another small thing that you can do to trigger your brain to think differently on demand, and you can apply it to this challenge, any other challenge that any of our listeners are actually facing right now, and it's super fun and easy to go. So this next exercise, it's called force connections. And force connections, it's all about helping your brain put things together that shouldn't be together, to be honest. You see examples of this in, like, for example, sofa beds, or the iPhone watch, or the Swiss Army knife. Like, they put stuff together that in general terms or historically should not be together. All of that done through force connections. So it helps you activate your brain and form new concepts out of things that you're not supposed to have concepts around. So the way it works is, you're going to give me a problem. Let's say, for example, how do I make my business plan radically innovative for next year? Something we always think is like, okay, next year I'll do something different than I did this year. Yes, right. How do you do that? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an object, and a random object. You can pick an object that you just saw in your nightstand, or you open a book and you just point to a word, or whatever you feel comfortable, an object. And then we're going to connect the two. We're going to think about, how does this object help me solve that problem? Okay, so I'll give you an idea. When I was building my own company, and I was thinking about how to position Just a Squiggle, I was having a really hard time. Like, how do you make this so important that everyone wants to do it? So I said, I'm going to go to my force connection exercise and see what it does. So I picked a random object, and in this case, it was a broccoli, super random. And then I started listing all the things that the broccoli does, like all its attributes. Okay, so it's green, it gives you vitamins, it's good for your health, kids hate it, like all the things that you can think about a broccoli. And then I asked myself, how do I connect both? How do I make this thing work? So how does a broccoli help me solve to do my position of Just a Squiggle radically different? And ideas started flowing. Like, for example, it could be the daily dose of vitamins for your brain. It could be what helps you get your brain stronger. All of these things started just coming out because I was forcing my brain to think about the attributes of a broccoli to solve my business challenge. So that's the beauty of it. You can actually do this on demand. So I'm going to pose that back to you. So how do you feel with that?
Great.
Okay, good. So we're going to take the last challenge you had in mind, is how do I get more attorneys into my podcast? That's the challenge, right?
Okay.
So I'm going to give you an object, and the object is going to be a megaphone. Okay? A megaphone. So I want you to think about the attributes of a megaphone. Okay? What is it? How is it? And I would like you to connect it with your challenge. How does a megaphone help you bring more people into your podcast?
Okay.
Just putting it out there. Just a couple of ideas. We don't have to have the problem solved right now, but I can help you if you want.
So, well, should I start listing attributes of a megaphone that I can
Yes,
think of?
please. Tell me.
All right. Well, it's a physical object.
Yeah.
It's electronic.
Love it.
It takes sound and greatly amplifies it.
Yep.
it blocks your mouth.
Love
Your
it.
mouth when you're using it.
Good.
Is that enough?
I love it. Yes, great. Okay. So with those things in mind, I'll add it's loud. How do you connect that to your problem? How do we get more people into your podcast using a megaphone?
Well, I think the obvious answer, which is the place I'll go first, is you have to speak more loudly and to be heard. And so
Yep.
I've got to make a broader, louder reach to the target audience.
Love it.
So I think that's the obvious connection.
That's I love what you said about sound amplified. So it amplifies the sound. So what happens if, for example, you can amplify their voices? So for every person that you invite to the podcast, you can help make their message bigger into the world. Maybe they stand for something else that is not just the law, but maybe they're doing something else. So thinking about those angles, start getting your ideas flowing. It's like, okay, amplify the sound. So how do I amplify them? How do I make them loud? Or how I make myself more loud to make this podcast so visible, so visible, or you can hear it everywhere. Maybe it's about being in different outlets, not just one outlet. That might be it.
So that's great, but I gotta say I'm not satisfied because I mean, to me that was just too easy. I want to take a different attribute of the megaphone and see if I can do something with it. Like the one I said about how it covers your mouth.
I love that.
Just because that's a weird one.
It is a weird one. I like talking about the weird ones of breaking the rules, like mix it up with this thing. Okay, how do we do that?
Yeah, so what came to mind, and I guess I am kind of mixing it with the first exercise, but what came to mind is the kind of like on Zoom and I can't even think of the name of the other app. You can have digital masks, like I could give myself a goatee or something like that. Yeah. And sort of the way in which you can and even the modern world, like, okay, with COVID, we all were wearing masks, and then we were all on Zoom and Teams and whatever. And a lot of us were initially joking on with making fake mustaches, not in court. Although there's a funny story about a lawyer in court who was a dog. But I don't know, how do I use that to solve the problem is sort of the piece of forced connections that you're suggesting. And I'm not.
But
not
I
sure
love it because you just mentioned that. It's like maybe there's something around how do you market it, about like putting a tape on your mouth and then you just speak. There's so many ways that you can go around this. Maybe it could be your marketing, maybe it could be your communication, maybe it could be your logo. There's so many other ways, and we can actually explore that.
Yeah, so that we only have a minute left, but the other thought I started to have with a megaphone is that it doesn't only just amplify the sound, it distorts the voice, right? It's so loud that it's distorted.
True.
And that I think happens like in my field, right, where people's words are distorted, and particularly in disputes, or misconstrued.
Yep.
So yeah, maybe there's something with that. We are out of time, unfortunately. But I really do appreciate your putting me through this torture. And
on the spot.
And I feel like I should sign up for more torture, and actually that that the listeners here may be interested in the same,
Yes.
because we all need a little torture in our lives.
That's true. A good
No, I'm kidding about the torture. But like for people who are interested, right? You've got your website here, and your is that your Twitter? And I believe you have a list, right, that people can sign up on your website.
Yes, my invitation is for anyone that wants to get into my Creative Genius list. It's just a newsletter that I send tips and hacks and things to help you. I do a lot of coaching for teams, so happy to help with that. Just send me a message, happy to do that. You can connect with me at justasquiggle.com or any social media, just a squiggle away. And I'm more than happy to help you in your endeavor and happy to help you and your teams.
Thanks so much, Camila. I signed up in the wee hours last night, as you may have seen, so I'm all set. But
Yes.
really appreciate your being here, and thank you for the exercises and the experience. Look forward to having you again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invitation. Have a great day.
Thanks. You've been listening to Intangify on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live 12 p.m. Eastern time on Fridays for every episode. I'm Matthew Asbell, your host, and have a great day.